Hey Mackenzie, what's going on?
Hey Doug, nothing much. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. My day has been pretty good so far. I woke up super early by accident at like 5 and decided to work out at the gym just early. So yeah, pretty good. I'm probably gonna get tired this afternoon, but I feel good right now. So what's new with you?
Um, Nothing much. Just I went and tried to renew my passport today, so that was exciting.
Fun. How did that go? Did you get it renewed?
No, I have to go in tomorrow. I didn't check the walk-in times. I didn't have an appointment, so they told me to come back tomorrow. But that's okay. I have all
Yeah.
of my paperwork together, so all I have to do is just show up, so that's good.
Very good. Yeah, well, it's classic bureaucracy. So I would have been surprised if you were able to like pull that off
Yeah.
on the first
Yeah,
try.
I tried. I really thought maybe that could work, but no, it didn't happen. Yeah,
No
that's
way. All right. So a lot of people may not know who we are at all. So can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Mackenzie. I'm a fellow YouTuber and freelancer. I freelance digital marketing and virtual assistant services. And I am also a digital nomad, so I travel around. I work from my laptop, and my base is in Berlin, Germany. So that's where I'm at right now. And I've been able to travel all over Europe, and I've been able to go over to Asia and go back home and visit Mexico and the US and everything. So that's kind of been my gig is documenting my travels while also doing these other digital marketing services on the side. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. And did you have a corporate job before in the
Yeah,
past?
so it was sort of corporate. It was actually like a government organization, but it was like run privately by, I don't know if if I told you about like my previous jobs, but it's really interesting because they were government run, but they were like managed by these big hotels like Marriott and these big hotels. And I was part of their tourism like association. So I was doing marketing services for them. So that was kind of my job previously. But it was like totally 9 to 5, like 8 to 8. Not much vacation time. Like in my last job, I didn't get any vacation time my first year. Um, and yeah, just like very much, yeah, just kind of in a little office and just not really, yeah, not so nice.
Not fun.
Yeah. So,
Got it.
yeah, that's basically what I did beforehand. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Cool. And I'm Doug Cunnington. I do affiliate marketing generally and some other internet marketing stuff. I have a blog called Niche Site Project that I started, I guess, about 5 years ago. Um, just I was like looking for side projects, I guess, not on purpose, but I found affiliate marketing by accident and started, working on a couple websites here and there, and then I guess it was 2015, so a few years later, I got laid off and ended up like working on affiliate sites full time. So at some point, I continued to grow my brand. And I guess no air quotes required. I used air quotes, but it is a brand at this point, which seems weird. So I have a YouTube channel, a blog, and a podcast. And this, if you're watching this, thank you on the YouTube side. We're also putting it on the podcast as well. So if you're listening to this, it's totally fine. We'll describe anything that we need to, but you're not missing out. We're just looking at each other on Skype right here. So, all right, cool. So the reason why we're doing this, this particular session is we're talking about the 4 hour work week. And Mackenzie and I work together. She helps me a lot on tons of things. So on the YouTube side, with the blog, some of my affiliate sites as well. She helps me with everything. And we were talking about the 4 hour work week because Mackenzie was rereading it. So I was like, that's cool. Like, let me know how it's going. It'll be interesting to talk about it because it's a very influential book for a lot of people in our
Mhm.
industry, and in many other industries as well. So anyway, that's why we're talking about it today. And in the last couple weeks, we are recording this in like early or mid January 2019. In the last couple weeks on the Tim Ferriss podcast, there have been a few case studies mentioned and
Mhm.
featured, and they're like, an hour to 2 hours long, like really digging into
Yeah.
particular case studies. So, Did you hear that noise? Georgie just like jumped up and hit the sliding glass window.
I did.
Yeah.
That was
So
pretty impressive.
yeah, I wish you could see it. It's insane. She like reaches so high. So
Oh.
anyway, that is why we are talking about the 4-hour work week today. So we're going to go through a few things. We're going to talk a little bit about at least one of the case studies that was on the Tim Ferriss podcast. We're going to talk about like certain things that we found very inspiring in the 4-hour work week, and we're going to go through our dreamlines as well, at least partially. I know I have my wife's dreamline too, so we actually sat and worked on this stuff together a few years ago. So anyway, Mackenzie, did you read the 4-hour work week before, or was this your first time through?
Yeah, so I read it previously. I think I read it maybe in 2016, so just a couple years ago. But it's nice because actually before I just had a PDF of the 4-hour work week, and then this time I have the actual hard copy book. So it's actually really nice. I really enjoy hard copy books. I think that they create a lot of clutter, but they're also really nice because you can make notes and bookmark pages and stuff like that easier.
Yep.
So yeah, the first time that I read it a couple years ago it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe that that was like a thing to actually be able to do that. Because before that, before I started reading it, I had just been traveling for 6 months backpacking right after university, and I was like, oh, like the corporate world can't be like everything that there is in this life. So
Right.
yeah, I was super inspired by it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I didn't pick up, I heard about the 4-hour work week after I got started working online through friends and my mastermind group and stuff like that. But I didn't read it until maybe like the middle of 2014 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like you, I ended up with a PDF or maybe I think maybe I had an audiobook version as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it all sounded it all sounded great and really inspiring just overall. And I remember there were a few pieces that really like got my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So one, I even wrote it down to make sure I didn't mess it up. So if you haven't read the book, anyone who's listening, you should check it out. You should check it out. It is from 2007, so it is a bit dated here and there. And Tim Ferriss and other people have addressed it. I think the Tropical MBA podcast, they've given their insights, and Tim Ferriss has mentioned, yeah, if I rewrote the book or updated it, you can imagine there's some different tools, maybe a few different areas where, for example, I'll be specific, like Amazon FBA or Fulfilled by Amazon is like a big channel that people can use, and it wasn't available back in 2007
Yeah.
specifically.
Well, and I think also he comes up with updated versions of the book every now and then. So the one that I have is like expanded and updated, but I'm also not sure like how expanded and updated even this version is, because it just seems like, especially in this field, things are just always expanding and changing.
Right.
So yeah, even going through it, I also see a lot of things that maybe could be updated or aren't so relevant anymore. But I guess that's the nature of writing about something like that. It's always going to change. So
Right. And I have the same version. 2009 is when the updated expanded version. So I
right.
think the expansion was mainly like adding more case studies,
Mm,
and not as much updating like tools. Now the good thing
okay.
is a lot of it is it's just tactical, and it's like principles versus like
Hmm.
specific processes.
Yeah.
So he's sort of vague in a lot of areas, and it which is good because I mean the reality what happens is we'll get into our specific like how it impacted us specifically,
Hmm.
but like everything sounds like pretty straightforward. Come up with a product, sell it, right? It's like two things, pretty simple, right? Pretty
Yeah.
easy to do. Like when you get down to it, it's really simple.
Yeah.
But as soon as you try to do anything, there's like so many hurdles in your way. And then like you have to be naive enough to get started with something, and naive enough to like not realize the competition is really pretty tough, and
Hmm.
there's so much that you don't know, which is an asset, because if you know a lot, then it can could actually hold you back because you're analyzing everything just a little too much. So
Definitely, for sure.
so one of the huge things that I got out of the book was the deferred life plan, which is like retirement, right? So usually I'm a few years older than Mackenzie, and I think it was really like hammering, or it was hammered home rather, like going through college and then like the early couple years when I had a corporate job, and basically it's like you just work really hard until you're 62-ish, and then you get to retire, and like you're just like aiming towards that. And I mean, a lot of my friends were like buying like bigger cars or nicer cars, bigger houses. They were basically just like growing their debt as they like progressed in the company or whatever. And by the way, it was only like 2 or 3 years in, but I could just see people, they would just get like really like nice stuff, and it was really easy to fall into that like pattern. So anyway, the deferred life plan, after I heard a few people talk about it, I was like, well, that sounds terrible. That like we can do stuff now, and that is part of like the mindset portion of it. So any thoughts around that, Mackenzie?
Yeah, I mean, I think I also have some experience with just people around me wanting to just buy really nice things and, working 60, 80 hours a week and then saying, oh, but then I'll do all that stuff when I'm retired. But then it's a bit like, yeah, but what if you aren't feeling well, you don't have your health anymore, or something happens, like you just never know. And so it's like when you're putting off something like that for such a far thing, it's almost like you're not living in the present moment and doing what you enjoy right now. And that it can create a miserable life. I mean, if that's something you want to do and you want to work 80 hours a week and buy lots of nice things, then that's like totally cool, like you do you. But like, I think for a lot of people, that just seems like that's not nice at all. Like, who wants to live like that for so many years? So I think I definitely try and live that sort of lifestyle where I'm minimal and everything like that, but I also give myself time to have a balance in life and with work and everything. And I think it's really nice. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine working 8 hours a week and then buying Audis and BMWs. Like, I would much rather be in my little apartment and traveling around and having more time and stuff like that. But I guess the whole like 4-hour work week thing is it's giving you whatever you feel like will make you happy. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I think I have a couple friends who still work. I used to do management consulting. So I still have a few friends that stuck in that industry. Actually, most of them do, right? Most people don't quit because it pays really well, right? So most people don't quit because it pays well and you have a lot of benefits. But I was going to say, it's so easy to like be around people, be in a culture, and then all of a sudden you adapt. Like people adapt really quick. So when 80% of the people around you are like working 60 hours a week, working on the weekends, and like buying like increasingly expensive we're hammering on cars, but like people spend a lot of money on cars. We'll come to that because it's actually on my Dreamline at some point, which is interesting, right? Because I don't care about cars that much. So anyway, it's really easy to adapt, and then all of a sudden you'll find yourself like with an expensive car, like you're going on vacations that you can't quite afford, and then all that sort of thing. So anyway, the other part, like with the consulting and many other industries too, the pay is really good, so it's really hard to like walk away from it. But there's a couple lines in the book that I wrote down I wanted to mention, and like sort of the worst case, as mentioned in the book, is a tolerable, comfortable existence doing something unfulfilling, which for most people don't like their job, right? So it's like kind of across the board, across countries, industries, whatever. Most people don't like their job. Some people do, and it's great if you do. but a lot of people don't. And it is especially an issue where you're paid well and you don't like it because it's hard to walk away from like the golden handcuffs, as they say.
Yeah,
So,
that's so true. Well, I think like as humans, we want to feel like we're secure and doing so, and having a job like that. It's just totally secure. Like you know your paycheck's going to come. You know that every month you're going to be able to pay your bills, at least like, you know, most of it anyway, if you're not going crazy, I guess.
right.
If you're living within your means. And to not have that is just very, very scary. And I feel like 4 Hour Work Week definitely really highlights that, and like that is really scary, but like but you can do it if you can like push through that fear. So
Yep. And there's a whole, we'll get to it in just a second, but there's a whole exercise around fear setting.
mhm.
So before, like one thing I mentioned, really hammering people on like hating their job and stuff. In the beginning of the book, Tim mentions like, do you have to hate your job? Do you have to quit your job or anything like that? And the answer is no.
Mhm.
Like the ideas in the book are great to like get started with a side project. And for me, I would have stayed at my job for a very long time if I didn't get laid off. Turns out it was probably great that I got laid off, but
Mhm.
I was just working on things on the side, which was fine. It was interesting. I was bored at work doing the same thing for a while, so it was cool to learn new stuff and like make decisions and have like a whole other set of activities I can do. Now,
Mhm.
did you like quit your job and start traveling, or what? How did you end up where you're at?
Yeah, so I quit without anything like lined up. I didn't, well, I started one small little side project while I was still working. And we can talk about that a bit later. But I that's like that's it. Otherwise, I didn't do anything else other than just work at my in my little office at my corporate job. So when I quit, it was like a total leap. Like there, I had nothing lined up. Like I had some money in savings because I made pretty good money at my previous job. So I was able to save up a bit, but there wasn't any sort of safety net really in regards to like having a side hustle and like extra money coming in. So yeah, it was just kind of like a total leap of faith, and I decided to go to Hawaii for a little while, and then I went back home to Colorado, and then I ended up going to Europe, and then coming up here to Berlin, and then being able to immigrate here. So it just was kind of this like consecutive thing where I didn't have anything, and then slowly I like put my feelers out there, and this is what I'm good at, and then I slowly was able to get to where I'm at now, where I have like a pretty solid base income wise. So yeah, I don't know. It's like yeah, it's really interesting how it's at the time that was so scary, but then looking back, it didn't seem as scary as at the time. I don't know. It's a very weird thing
Right.
to think about actually, because I can't even imagine myself in that situation anymore. But I don't know. Could you see yourself still working at corporate, or is it something you just couldn't even imagine?
Um, I think in my old job, potentially it's weird because I was at the very end. Let me gather my thoughts here. At the very end, I was kind of operating
Mhm.
um, however I wanted to. I'll put it that way. So I got laid off, and I think I was on the front end of the layoffs because I was kind of I was going rogue. All right,
Really?
so I read the 4 Hour Work Week, and actually let me describe like my old like job a little bit. So I'm a project manager. I have my PMP certification.
Hmm.
So like had a I'd moved up. So I had managed projects for like I don't know 5 years or so. And then I had a team working for me. So I had like between 6 and 15 people
Hmm.
who were project managers managing projects. And then I managed like maybe one project, but really I just managed the team.
Hmm.
And then I reported to, this is a classic, org chart here. So I reported to like a senior director,
Hmm.
and like they had 4 other people like me or so with teams like me.
Hmm.
So I was sort of like classic middle management right there.
Hmm.
And I was observing all these like inefficient things that we were doing,
Yeah.
duplicate work,
Yeah.
just like dumb tasks, wasting time and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And some of it, I mean, like with an organization, like that's just going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But some of it, I was like, well, why don't we change this thing? And I would always get pushback on, oh, you know what? We should ask. Like my boss would say, oh, we should ask our other boss and
Hmm.
see, and then if you do it, we want all the rest of the teams to do it. And basically, change is scary, so no one wants to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we don't have to like roll this out for 150 people. I could just test it on my small team, like right here, and see how it goes.
Hmm.
But they're like, you know what? This is going to be a really big change. So I started. This is part of the book. We'll come to it. So I'll give you the example. Things are reversible, right? So if you make a decision, usually you can go back to where you were in many different areas. So I wanted to change processes,
Hmm.
and the specifics don't matter, but I wanted to change certain things. I couldn't get approval, but then I started to not ask anymore, and then I would just like implement things on my team,
Uh-huh.
right? So I would just roll it out, test it. If it went well, then I would share it with my peers,
Uh-huh.
and then like get them interested in it. So everyone on the team was like, "Hey, let's do this,"
Yeah.
and then we could roll it out.
Yeah.
So through like infiltrating and not asking for permission, some of it messed up, by the way.
Hmm.
A few times it messed up, but it also it got the team thinking of like new ideas.
Hmm.
So I would ask for them, and I would get suggestions, and I was like, let's roll it out, let's do it. Where
Yeah.
most of the time in like a rigid corporate environment, you come up with an idea, you get rejected, you stop suggesting stuff, things are stagnant,
Yeah.
people are not interested in doing anything. So anyway,
Yeah.
tying it all together, I think I probably got laid off because I was like a squeaky wheel, and I was doing stuff that was not like, I don't know, just orthodox to the company and organization and all that stuff. Um, to answer your question, which was, could I see myself in a corporate
Uh-huh.
environment? Potentially, if it was like a more flexible place. I think like much smaller companies, startups or something like that, may see the things that I was doing as valuable, but I was working for like big telecom, right? So they're pretty rigid in their ways, and they didn't really want to do anything super different. Everything was very slow. So
Yeah. Yeah.
very long answer, but
No, but that's super interesting. No, I had no idea that you had gone rogue. I think that's really cool.
yeah. And like I said, a couple of the things didn't go well, but a few times, like I was able to roll out like a huge thing that worked because like I tested it and it worked well, and other people liked the idea. So then I could like roll it out to 150 like people on the team wide,
Uh-huh.
and stuff like that actually is like how I got promoted.
Hmm.
Um, just because I could say, hey, I implemented this thing and it went across teams, and it made people who I didn't work with directly like know who I was.
Hmm.
So when I needed to getting promoted, by the way, it's a lot of politics usually.
Yeah.
So having a bunch of people who will speak up for you is way more valuable than like doing a good job. And
Hmm.
most people will say that, but if you have the politics all lined up, like it's a shoo-in. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Oh.
getting back to the point, like the corporate like environment and the culture and stuff could be a good fit for me. So I wouldn't say any potential future employers out there, I would never say like, hey, I will never work for anybody again.
Yeah.
It's a dumb thing to say, right?
Yeah.
I like working for myself a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think something that I've really seen here in Berlin is there's a huge like startup. I mean, there's a ton of freelancers here and people doing what I do, but there's also a huge startup culture where it's kind of I don't know if it's necessarily ideal for everybody, but it's you have a flexible working schedule, and you have like the opportunity that if you want to implement these new ideas, you can. Everybody, is really like casual and nice, so you can just kind of come in and out when you want to or whatever. Like it's just really chill and everything. And I think that's a really nice environment to work in. And then also with startups, it's kind of like you're working for a cause that maybe like you believe in. So like that also seems like really cool, to like maybe work for something like that. So there's different options. Like I feel like there's corporate, but then there's also this sort of other area that's just kind of becoming more popular, and then it's also working for yourself. Like there's so many different avenues, and that's what's cool about the 4-hour work week. Like it gets you thinking about which avenue maybe would work best for you, and it doesn't have to be this way or that way. It's just whatever works best for you. So
Right.
that's what's
Right.
cool.
Right. I know that you've gone through the exercises more carefully as you're rereading the 4-hour work week. So how's that been going? Like, can you just tell us, maybe give us an example of a couple of the exercises and how it's been working out for you?
Yeah. It's going okay. I kind of slowed down a bit on doing them really carefully just because it was making me go so slowly through the book that I didn't think that I was ever going to finish it. And it's kind of one of my New Year's resolutions is to like actually finish the book that I'm reading. So I've kind of stopped going through them so carefully. I think it's also part of it is making sure that you kind of just soak everything in, and whatever sticks out to you sticks out to you. So a big thing for me though was the dreamlining. I really loved the dreamlining exercise, and I only got through like 6 months, like what I want to do in the next 6 months. But still, it's
Hmm.
at least gets you thinking about it, and that like anything is possible really. Like I also really like that he was like, okay, calculate your total daily income or whatever, because then it just shows like if you want to rent a Lamborghini, you can for like $200 a day or something. So like if that's what you
Hmm.
want, you can do that. Or if you want to, like one of mine is like live in Bali for a month, which would
Hmm.
be really fun. And once I like calculate the actual cost, it's actually not that much to do that. So
Right.
the exercise has been like super powerful for me. I don't know how it was for you and if like things came true for you, but for me
Hmm.
it was awesome. So
Cool.
yeah.
Well, before we like talk a little bit more about our dreamlines, can you like describe just sort of like the idea behind the dreamline, and we could place a link for people because I
Yeah.
think on Tim Ferriss's blog, like he gives out the template to go through. I mean, it's like a
Okay.
one pager
Yeah.
exercise. So yeah, what's the idea behind it?
Yeah. Okay, so from what I got from the book was like dreamlining was basically a way to just lay out the things that you want to have in your future. And he talks about like 6 months, 1 year. I don't remember if he goes like 3 years or 5 years, but I think you can. You can do whatever timeline I think you want. Like it's kind of the beauty of this exercise. You can just decide whichever amount of time you want to get stuff. And then he just does a really good job at like telling you, okay, if you want to have like on here I have like the new iPhone. So then he tells you, okay, so if you want to have like the new iPhone, what is the cost of this iPhone? And then you write down the cost, and then it's like, okay, well then can you like do payments in the iPhone? Okay, so then if you can do payments, then that's a lot less than if you just were to buy the iPhone outright. So then how much would you have to make per day to then be able to afford that monthly payment? So it just kind of makes everything seem more in reach, I guess. That's like what's really nice about it. Another one I have that he also wrote in the book was like be able to have like a 10-minute conversation in a certain language. I wrote German because I live in Germany now. But then you have to go through like the doing steps. So you have to either like take a class or you do like 15 minutes every day of YouTube videos learning German or whatever, and stuff like that. So it just kind of, you write down things you want and then the steps on how to get them. So that was kind of what the exercise I was doing. And those were just a couple of examples, but I have other things on here as well. So
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. In by the way, dreamlining I believe is like your dreams applied to a timeline, or
Mm.
daydreaming to a timeline or something like that. I don't
That's
know
a
if
way
he
better way to explain it.
explicitly
Yeah.
explicitly saying it. So you're like, um, I can't remember if I've already said this, but it's like the people want to or what is it? You don't need millions of dollars. You just did I already say that quote? Did I already say that just now?
I don't think so. Maybe at some point in our conversations, but I don't think
All right.
during this one.
We prepped earlier, so like we're repeating a few things, but people don't want to necessarily be millionaires. I know some people may disagree, but you just want to experience what you think millions can buy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the points of the Dreamline is, for example, if you want to live in Bali, um, you don't have to live there permanently,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's say I want to spend, let's say I want to live in LA, which is expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to like buy $1 million house in LA. I could probably rent a place.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably still be really expensive, but I could probably rent a place and live in LA for a couple months and just experience what it's like to live there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can maybe rent a car for a little while so I could really fit in there.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. I don't want to. I mean, I would visit LA, but I don't want to move there. Anyway, the point is, like, you don't have to have millions. And there are other routes to get, like, what you think you want. And quick digression before we get into my Dreamline a little bit and then yours. Part of it is we think that we want something, and I have a very good friend. He and his wife thought that they wanted to live in a particular place,
Mm-hmm.
and they had like a life changing event, sort of traumatic, and they were like, "Hey, like we're not going to live forever. We should like chase, like seize the day, right? We should chase after it
Mm-hmm.
and start now." And they ended up buying a place in a very sort of remote yet expensive place.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived there for a couple of years and realized, well, they don't want to live in a remote place.
Mm-hmm.
They moved from a big city to like a place where there's, the closest town is 10 miles away and there's only like 1,500 people there.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up realizing they wanted to move somewhere, and they could have tested it. So this process also allows you to test your ideas of what you think you might like.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you go to Bali and you're like, it sucks. It probably won't suck there, but like you're like, hey, it's a great place to visit. I don't want to live there, right? There's a lot of places like that. So my friend, they unfortunately had to sell the place, or they wanted to sell it, but it's so remote and so expensive. It was like a dream house sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And they ended up having to sell it at quite a loss. It was on the market for like 2+ years, mm-hmm. and it's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. And I think they may actually be working until they're 62 mm-hmm. because like they're living a bigger lifestyle. So anyway, mm-hmm. Coming back to it, I did a Dreamline. My wife and I both did a Dreamline about 4.5, almost 5 years ago, I guess.
Okay.
Back when I lived in Atlanta. So I pulled it up on my. We kept a copy, so if you do this exercise, you should definitely like keep it because it's interesting what you come up with. So I wrote, and I'm just going to go through it, and I'll put a link in the show notes. I could share this with people. So my 6 month, there's having, doing, and being. So having, this is interesting. So having is in 6 months, a house in Colorado, a new truck, mm-hmm. less clothing, less stuff, a nicer blender, that's funny, and a very good workspace. And for the 12 month, I was like, hey, you know what? Same thing. Like if I have that stuff, like that's good. And a couple interesting things. So number one, 2 of them are just having less stuff. Like I literally just wanted to get rid of things. Mm-hmm. So that makes it easier. A couple of them are super easy. A nicer blender, like you can just buy one of those. That's pretty easy. All right, doing. So I didn't do the 6 and 12 month. I just listed out stuff. So mm-hmm. hike more often. I said twice a month. Just walk more in general. Visit a few more states. So I've been to all 50 states at this point. But at that point in time, I had not been to Vermont, Rhode Island, or Idaho. All right.
Mm.
So now
Wow.
I've been to all 50 states at this point. I say visit the UK, which I haven't. Work no more than 10 hours a week, which there are some weeks that I work more than 10. Work in a coffee shop once a week. Visit all the continents. I'm not a huge traveler at this point, but I think I was like, oh, well, why not add it on there? All right, so
Yeah.
visit Iceland, drive to Alaska, and go to the driving range twice a month, which is, I think we had just gone to Top Golf because I'm not a golfer.
Uh,
I don't care. I think it's a waste of time. Um, but I think we just went to Top Golf, and I did really well. Like I was pretty good in Top Golf, so I was like, oh, I should get back into it. Okay, and then I'll finish it up here. The being is be a highly followed blogger. Um, Publish another book. So I wrote a book on like affiliate marketing right when I got started. Um, and I don't know why I thought write another book because I don't have a huge interest in it. Write more often. Number four is have a highly followed YouTube channel, which is interesting because I
oh.
dropped that for multiple years and never thought about it. Run two half marathons, which I think that year I ran a few more. Um, be able to do 100 push-ups like in a row, which I trained and was eventually able to do that. Be able to
Cool.
do 25 pull-ups, which I think I got up to like 23. And I developed
Hmm.
some. Is this boring at this point? I'm just talking about myself. Um,
No, I think it's
my
cool.
elbows started like I had got like some sort of tendonitis in my elbows. Um, but
Mm.
pull-ups and push-ups are really good. I need to do more of those. And finally, I put meditate. So I meditate a lot more now, and I think I refined a few of the things here. But like once I wrote it down, and I was like, oh, what do I want? A lot of this stuff was really easy. Now, a couple of I think I went back and highlighted a few of the areas where I was like, okay, I really want to like focus on these. So one was the house, and the thing is, this was 2014. My wife and I lived
Mhm.
in Atlanta basically our whole lives in the metro
Mhm.
area there, and we had no plans of moving at all. However,
Mhm.
by the summer of 2015, we sold our condo and moved to Montana. So I would argue because like
Mhm.
we actually
Wow.
looked at the Denver area a little bit, but once we got here, we were like, hey, we like it better here. So we moved to Bozeman. So that's like we're closer to the mountains. It's a little bit colder, but it's like less traffic and like a lifestyle that we were looking for
Yeah.
specifically. So
Wow.
that's like a huge thing where like we sold a place, went on a road trip, we moved, blah blah blah. Like that was huge, and that was just like the one aspect, and everything else sort of like followed behind it. At least the most important things. There's a lot of travel. There was some stuff on there where I was interested like that day or something. So
Yeah. Okay. Oh, cool. That's super awesome. Thanks for sharing.
sure. Like, and what do you have on yours? Because you kind of went through some stuff, and it's like it's hard
Yeah.
to sit down. By the way, while you're queuing up there, I highly encourage people to do this exercise. It should only take like 20 minutes if you work through it, but it's really scary to
Mhm.
like commit something on paper. You have to really think like, what the fuck, like, do I actually like want to do? Like, if I'm really going to focus on this,
Yeah.
what should I do? So what do you have there?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's super tough and I didn't even finish mine really. Like I felt like there were just so many things and I wasn't sure what I actually wanted. Like I had this whole block doing it, which is really interesting, but I still have some things filled out. So in my having, it's also like very minimal. Like I don't have that many things. But my having, I have the new iPhone 10. I wrote for iPhone 10 here, but I ended up actually getting the newest one. Um, and then also a Yeti microphone. and that's about it. But actually, while you were saying it, I also really want a blender or maybe a juicer. So I'll have to probably write that down. And then my being is one of them is have a conversation in German. I didn't specify a time though, so maybe I should write in there like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something. That's something I noticed my pattern. Definitely, I'm not like super specific. Whereas I think it was cool for you. You were like, oh, I should do 100 push-ups in a row or whatever. Um, I could definitely work on that for sure. And another one is be an author or write a book. So that was one of my being ones. And then my doing is so live in Bali for 1 month. I also want to do a UX design course because I think it's really cool. And I did like a workshop a few weeks ago and I really enjoyed it. So I'd love to do just like a course on it just to learn a little bit more about that. I want to read a new book per month, like one book per month. And then also, I want to be able to renew my visa here and be able to stay in Europe because that would be very nice to be able to stay in Europe. So yeah, those are all the things that I wrote down. Um, and then there were some like associated costs there and everything like that. But for the most part, those are just the things. So
Cool.
yeah, it's really cool to go through it, but it is very difficult sometimes. But I think once you get some things down, then maybe you'll think of other things or maybe you want to take things out. Like it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you don't have to be hard on yourself. Just do it and then you can forget about it and then maybe, in a year or something you can come back or 4 years or
Right.
whatever, you can see the things you actually achieved. So
In the as I wrote, or sorry, as I was reading that out, I recall that. So you're supposed to list out stuff. It's like a brainstorming session too. So you just like list it out,
yeah.
and then part of the exercise is to go back and pick I can't remember like top three or top four, and write down the first three steps. So write down the first three steps, and he
Yeah.
encourages you. Once you've gotten the list and you've refined it, you figure out how to do
Hmm.
it. Now, part of it is like figuring out how much it'll cost, right? So that was the
Yeah.
whatever the calculator, and it's basically it helps you figure out how much money you need. And part of it
Hmm.
is you realize that you don't need to be a millionaire to do this stuff that you want to do, especially if you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
just want to do this temporarily, like check out Bali for a month. Um,
Yeah.
so as you go through and write down the first three steps, you're supposed to, if I remember right, you're supposed to take action like the next morning. So each day, like
Yeah.
before 11 a.m., before you could like put it off and other things get in the way,
Mhm.
you're supposed to like take action to like get that thing done. Um,
Yeah. They have like the steps now and then like tomorrow and then the day after. So like he really forces you to like go through each thing and like how, okay, you're going to achieve this. What are the steps? You have to write them down.
yeah. And part of
Yeah.
like, you know, achieving goals and all that stuff is like writing it down, like dissecting the steps.
Mhm.
And then, as I mentioned before, like you will end up like finding all these pitfalls and all these areas that you can make a mistake. There's like endless failure points along the way. And
Mhm.
you have to just like push through and figure it out basically. So
Yeah.
tying it back to a couple of the case studies that were on the Tim Ferriss podcast recently, there was one guy named Alan. Mackenzie, do you remember the person's last name?
I don't.
Doesn't matter.
But wait.
All right. So
Yeah.
he has spy equipment. So he has a website. It's like the spyguy.com or something like that.
Mhm.
And we'll put links to the Tim Ferriss show so you could listen and check it out, and then to this person's site. But basically, his story is he worked at a spy supply shop where you can get like hidden microphones or small microphones and like hidden
In
cameras and
Yeah.
stuff a private investigator may use to
Yeah.
whatever do their surveillance.
Hmm.
And so he worked there for a few years and then eventually like reached a point where he didn't like it anymore. He quit and then started basically an e-commerce shop where he sold that equipment. Now the great thing is he learned the trade while like
Hmm.
on the job. So he got paid, learned the trade, made lots of
Hmm.
contacts and stuff like that, and then he launched over on his own site. And I think it's like a, just a couple, one or two people that work on his staff. It's him, and it's like a, over, I think it's an it's over
Yeah.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's over a million. It may even be over 10 million in revenue. But anyway, super interesting because he literally like read the 4 hour work week and tried to apply some of the ideas there. Now you listened to a lot of the episode. Anything jump out at you from Alan's story?
Yeah, well, I really liked how Tim had him go over the whole drop shipping thing he did and getting the supplies and everything like that. Because what was really cool about his story was he just kind of quit his job and was like, okay, I want to start this new business. And then all of his inventory was like in his room. He said that he bought like 10,000. Sorry, I got a text message. But he bought like $10,000 worth of inventory and then he just like put it all in his room, and his wife was really upset about it and stuff, and then he would have to go to the post office every day and mail out all these packages, and it just was like getting to be too much and stuff like that. And just was really interesting because I could almost like picture myself doing something like that. Like his story was so relatable that I was like, wow, I could see myself, putting this inventory in my apartment and having to go to the post office every day and things like that. So he was really relatable. I really liked that. But what about you? What stood out to you in his interview?
I think part of it was like him just getting the training and learning the industry before he like jumped in. I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people, I guess I run across a lot of people who get started, which is great. Like the biggest thing is to like take action and like do something. As soon as you
Yeah.
get feedback, you could adjust. But there are some people who jump into something that they don't quite understand, or maybe they don't put in the time to do enough research ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a dangerous balance, right? You have to be able to like do the research, know enough, and then take action. Some people get stuck just doing research and they never take action. So his balance was really good, and I think it would have been harder for him to potentially like plan to like
Hmm.
get trained, and then he's like, oh, I'm gonna like go out on my own. Like he sort of reached the breaking point at that job, and then decided that he wanted to go out on his own. So that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Another portion is he learned like the marketing side of it as well. So he said that he was already familiar with like running Google ads basically. So he knew that he could get traffic that way and could get like eyes on the products. And specifically, right? He said he turned on the store, he set up his ads, and like the next morning he woke up and he had like a sale, and he was like, this is going to be okay, like we got a sale like overnight. Now
Yeah.
he
Def-
did all the prep ahead of time, and I think I know when I first got started, when I heard stories like that, I was like, oh, like, well, I was like, yeah, it'll work, like this guy did it. But I forget
Mhm.
that he had like a couple years of experience and like knew how to do this stuff, so it's not that big of a
Yeah.
stretch that it worked. But I remember telling like my wife, and she was skeptical. She's still skeptical, by the way. Like, but you tell people who maybe are my friends too. There's just a little more to it than, yeah. He put up the site. He ran some ads. He made $100 or whatever, like overnight. There was so much more to it. So part of it is I was impressed that he took action. It was really cool that he got his skills, but at the same time, it always sounds easier. And I try to emphasize that a lot. Everything
Mhm.
sounds like way easier when you're like summarizing it. So we
Yeah.
miss the 2 or 3 months where he was like without a job and working on
Yeah.
working on it full
Yeah.
time basically. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, and I think it was really cool what he was saying about Google Ads, and how he had like a cap of how much money, but he was spending like $100 to $200 a day on ads. And then he said at the beginning, I don't know if it was for like the first few months or something, but there was no organic traffic. Like it was all through paid ads. So I thought that was interesting as well, how he was able to kind of like manipulate Google to get people to his site, but it was working. People started buying it pretty quickly if he had a sale the next day. So
Yep, yep.
it's really interesting. Yeah.
So, and any other thoughts on sort of the case study with Alan or anything like that?
Well, there was also a huge problem that happened i- for him. Did you get that? Did you listen to the part where there was like a Catholic priest or whatever who bought one of the hidden cameras
Oh,
from
yeah,
him?
right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he just started like freaking out because what would that mean like for his business, if somebody was able to buy a hidden
Hmm.
camera from his company and use it for something really not good.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, I thought that was also really, really like interesting how he was able to like, okay, like we got to just make sure that we clean this
Hmm.
up and everything.
Hmm. And let me explain. So I forgot that portion of it. So a Catholic priest basically bought one of the hidden cameras, put it in a locker room. Um,
Yeah.
some of the kids reported it, or a kid reported it. The
Yeah.
parents told the priest who, like,
Yeah.
they reported it to the priest who was doing it, and then they
Yeah.
realized, hey, well, that never made it to the police. So they went to the police and they
Yeah.
investigated it. So the Alan, the owner, realized that he was in a position that could have been bad because the detective
Mhm.
contacted his company. So
Mhm.
rather than like, you know, distancing himself or anything
Mhm.
like that, he like worked with the detective. He worked
Mhm.
with or whatever the department was, and then also
Mhm.
worked with the press that was covering it locally. So they all
Mhm.
worked together to provide information, and basically, he was covered favorably in like whatever news story because he was cooperating with everybody and providing information, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that also really stood out to me. It's like, wow, okay, just never would have occurred to me something like that would happen. But yeah, it's crazy.
so I know you have a little bit more work to do on your dreamline and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
part of the book is to like come up with what Tim calls a muse, which for some reason I never liked that he called it that. I don't know why, but basically you
Hmm.
want to come up with some sort of business that you can make money that hopefully isn't so time intensive.
Hmm.
The goal generally, not always, but most of the time is like try to not trade your time for money, or at least like do it on a limited
Yeah.
basis and have different revenue streams. I'm summarizing a lot and probably taking some liberties, but that is a big portion of it. And I know like once you start thinking about it, it's like that's really hard. Like, are you going to like import a product from like somewhere? Are you going to make something and try and sell it? Are you going to do an info product and all these things? So I know you're
Yeah.
early in the process. You're in the middle of it. So what thoughts do you have around your muse?
So I've been thinking of diving into affiliate marketing because, like Doug, you and I have talked about it, and I have a couple of interests that I feel like would maybe be good for creating a site. So I've been thinking of that. I also my previous sort of side gig that I did was I was selling like meditation products from China. So I was like drop shipping them through my website on Shopify.
Mm,
Um, but it just, I just never put much time into it, and it just kind of ended up sort of dying. But I still have the domain and everything, so maybe something I could pick back up. But so I think that's something that I would probably be interested in doing. But those are my only real thoughts, really. I haven't done the exercises for that yet. So yeah, I think that's probably
okay.
something I'll think about. Yeah, but what about you?
Well, I'm gonna continue what I'm doing. So I make good good money on the affiliate side, which is great.
Yeah.
And then I've slowly like started to release courses, so that's a nice way to you know give back in a way. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't seen other videos, there's tons of training that I have on YouTube for free. But I also have a course, which is a great way to like basically the biggest thing that you get is like a framework, a very organized framework, and then you could ask me questions or I could like spend time and help you out. So courses have been really good, and I've slowly, extremely slowly, like, developed new courses. And there's like, after you go through it a couple times, there's like a pretty uniform process where you can, test ideas, release a course without, for example, my 5-figure niche site course is, I don't even know how many hours. I think it could be around 40. I'm just going to throw out a number. So my course, 5-figure niche site, has many hours of video. I'm not sure how much exactly, but there's many, many hours. And, one way that you can do a course is to work on everything in a closet, like in your office, just like get it done. You do all this work, and then you try to market it and realize that no one wants to buy it, or that you made a mistake in the process or something. So usually when I do a course, this is going like really deep into it. I'll do a pilot and like run through and get feedback on it before I spend
Yeah.
all the time like developing the
Yeah.
full
Do
course.
you, so
And then
when
you can even
you
run the second
are
group
testing a
through
course,
after
do
you've
you
developed
use like a
like
certain
the core
platform,
pieces,
or
and you can
how do
work a lot more
you go about
closely.
doing that? Because I feel like,
Usually you don't want to
I don't know,
have
I've
more
also
than
been
like
thinking about
maybe
courses,
15 or 20 people in the
but
initial
I would
group,
I would have no idea
so that
how
you can
I would be
actually
able
like
to
work with
test it
everyone
on maybe a
individually
few
on some
people, unless it's maybe my
level,
family and
get
friends.
their
But I
feedback,
guess
and
you
then
have to
you
get
end up
people
with a
who are
much
going to
better
give you
product.
honest feedback.
And you didn't like develop
But tools do you
this
use?
huge piece of content where maybe you spent 2 or 3 months working on it, and then it's not the right thing. So it's really, I mean, it's an iterative approach to make sure that you're developing a product that people want to buy. So anyway, I like courses.
Yeah. So when you are testing a course, do you use like a certain platform, or how do you go about doing that? Because I feel like, I don't know, I've also been thinking about courses, but I would have no idea how I would be able to test it on maybe a few people, unless it's maybe my family and friends. But
Right.
I guess you have to get people who are going to give you honest feedback.
Yeah, yeah.
But what tools do you use?
So I use a plugin for WordPress called Zippy Courses, which is fine. It's a lot more sort of manual. I have a technical background, so I'm fine and kind of prefer to get into the details and stuff. So it's a lot of configuration, but it works well, and I've been using it for a few years. So Zippy Courses works for me. Um, if I launch any new courses, I will probably work on something like Teachable,
Hmm.
since the platforms there, they manage affiliates, they manage a lot of things for you, and just, bite the bullet and pay the fees. Now, when you're doing the pilot, you should do it as simple as you possibly can.
Hmm.
So I've actually taken a course or two as a pilot from some of the people that I learned about courses from, and they released their course on via email. So they literally sent out a lesson via email. Maybe it
Hmm.
was a couple pages long with exercises, and then they would host live meetings on Zoom, I think, but you could
Hmm.
do it via like Google Hangouts or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, you want to make everything as like simple as possible. So yeah, some people will think, oh, you can't release a course on email. Well, you totally can, and it's a lot easier. More people can consume it because they can read it on their phone or
Hmm.
whatever. And then later, if you want to, if it works out, um, you can move it to video. You could shoot video and spend the time to do that. But the simplest solution is always the best, especially when you're testing. So, and it's really hard because you're going to end up, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be misspelled words in the email potentially, even if
Hmm.
use a spell check or whatever. There's going to
Yeah.
be problems, right?
Mm.
It's going to be a mess, basically.
Oh, but cool. No, that's super helpful. I feel like for so many people maybe want to start doing something like that, and that's, getting started is always the hardest part. So
Yeah,
thank
definitely.
you.
Cool. So, any other thoughts of the 4-hour work week or anything like that?
Um, no, I think if people are maybe thinking of reading it, I would say just go ahead and just read it and see what you get out of it. And don't worry if maybe some things aren't relevant to you. That's okay. Just, you know, as much if it's something you're interested in and it can benefit you in some way, then would say definitely just pick it up and read it.
Yeah, and I will emphasize to everyone to do the exercises. It's really easy to read a book and then just, hey, yeah, I understand most of the stuff and whatever. But when you sit down and try to figure out like the hard things that are uncomfortable, and you're like, well, you know, what am I gonna do? But I mean, the worst
Yeah.
thing, like I said, I was in like a comfortable job where I didn't like, it was unfulfilling, whatever the quote was, where it's a comfortable, unfulfilling job where it's really easy to stick with the status quo, and then you end up like at a job for like 10 or 15
Yeah.
years and like not where you thought you would be. Um, and particularly like jumping back to the middle management area, um, like in that middle management area, I basically would have stayed for like many years, even if I like moved companies or whatever. Like I probably would have been in that at that spot for another like 5 to 10 years, depending on where I moved. By the way, I'm not huge. I was not a super high performer. I was like pretty average, and then I started playing the politic game and got a little bit better. But generally, I was not an ultra high performer because I was like, uh, no, I don't, I would stop volunteering. Like I have a good friend, very accomplished, really does well. He's a company man, you know, um, but he works a ton. And basically, if the company ever asks him to do anything, he says yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not that person.
Mm-hmm.
I will say no. I will try to like go home at a normal time and like have a normal life or whatever, and
Yeah.
he'll work. He'll do it. So anyway, I can't remember the exact point I was trying to make, but like I was not going to progress much further than I was. So even if I stayed at the same company for like another 15 years, I would still be making about the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
And I make a lot more than that now, and I work a lot less, and I have a lot of freedom to, you know, go walk the dog for a couple hours in the middle of the day, which I'm about to do.
Yeah, no, it's so nice. And I think that's like, uh, yeah, I think that's super awesome. And I was also going to bring up one other point. Oh, I think it was doing the exercises. And also, one cool thing about this book is they have comfort challenges as well. So it's sort of like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. So they have like a eye gazing one. They also have like getting phone numbers from like attractive people, like sort of comfort challenges where it's like if you can just constantly be challenging yourself to do things that are uncomfortable, I think that's just growth in itself. So maybe if you are at your job or whatever, you can still do these comfort challenges and grow in a different way. And so that's also one thing that's really cool. It's not just writing down stuff. It's
Yeah.
actually doing things out in the world. So
All
that's
right.
cool too.
So have you done some of these comfort challenges?
So actually, the eye gazing one has been one that I learned a little while back because I did this like self improvement course when I think I was 16 or 17,
Mm-hmm.
and that was one of the things they said. Okay, like make sure that you make eye contact with everybody and like hold their gaze till they look away, and it's really uncomfortable at first because you're just like staring, um, but it makes you really uncomfortable and you just realize, yeah, eye contact's actually not that bad, and actually people really appreciate that you like connect with another human being. And the phone numbers one, well, I haven't really done that one. I think it's like, I don't know.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll see.
I didn't. There's another one where it's like I think you go to a coffee shop or a restaurant or whatever and just like lay on the floor for 10 seconds and don't say anything and just like get back up,
Yeah.
right?
Well, my boyfriend did that in the train here. He just was like, "Oh, should I do it?" And he was like, "I really want to do this comfort challenge." And I was like, "Cool, then you should do it right now." And then he's like, "Oh." And then he got really scared, but then it's like, "Just do it. You'll just be happy you got it over with." And then so I have a picture of him laying on the train floor in front of it for like 10
Yeah.
seconds.
And the idea behind it, it sounds random. The idea behind it is you can do things that make you feel really uncomfortable and that are not like culturally acceptable. And
Hmm.
you just get up off the floor and people look at you a little funny, but nothing
Yeah.
bad happens and it's totally fine. Like it's
Yeah.
generally fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
like one of the other challenges, I think, and I know Noah Kagan mentions this as well, but it's like the coffee challenge where you ask for like a 10%
Yeah.
discount on your coffee. Um,
Yeah.
and I've done that a couple times, like already or in the past. And yeah, people are like, oh, why should I give you a discount? And you could say like whatever you want. It doesn't matter if you get the discount or not. It's just like
Yeah.
asking because you get basically as you're standing in line, you get nervous and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, am I really going to do this? Am I going to lay on the floor or whatever?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You're gonna ask this person for the number.
yeah. Well, and I was
Yeah.
gonna say I'm married now. I've been married for a while. But I mean, yeah, I did that a bunch when I was trying to get phone numbers. And guess what? People will give you a phone number, some wrong
Yeah.
phone number most of the time. But I'm me,
Yeah.
so if you if you're a little more charming or you have more hair, you may actually get like the right phone number sometime.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing about what he says is it's like, you don't have to go into it being like, oh, I want to date this person. Like, and he was like, if you're in a relationship or married or whatever, just say that you're like with Greenpeace and you just are trying to get like phone numbers for people who are like behind the cause. So it's not about that. It's just more of like it's just scary to go up to somebody who's like attractive and like ask for their number.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, so it's like he kind of he'll like give you tips and tailor it if you're too scared or you feel like maybe this is a reason why you can't do it. Then he's like, no, you can just say this or do this, then it's okay. So that's
Yeah.
also
I was gonna say, like, I live in a smaller town now, so if I did this back in Atlanta, like, that'd be cool. Like, no one would notice or whatever.
yeah.
Usually, if I go to a restaurant or a bar or something like that, like, probably 50% of the time, like, I know someone there.
Oh,
So what would happen
fun.
is I would ask someone for their phone number, and then
Uh-huh.
someone I know would then tell my wife, and then we end up with some sort of
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
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 well
yeah. So
maybe do a different comfort challenge.
yeah, yeah. Actually, here's just random stuff since we're just chatting now. So, um, I went to like a spa to get a facial like earlier
Hmm.
this week because I have like
Nice.
a couple of clogged pores. I have bad skin. My
Yeah.
I'm
But you've got
follically
some glow on.
challenged. What'd you
Yeah, I
say?
see it. I said you have some glow on. I see it.
It was great. It was great. The thing is, I didn't care much, but my wife she thought like I was embarrassed or something, like to make the appointment, but I just hadn't gotten around to it, and I was like, I'm busy and whatever. So we walked by the spa, and she was like, oh, let's go in here. So anyway, made an appointment, went in, and it was fine. But for a second, I felt like a tad uncomfortable because this is like very close to where I live, and
Yeah.
there's again, I see people all the time, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, what if somebody sees me going into like the spa? Obviously, I'm not getting my hair cut or like
Yeah.
anything else, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
it was a little funny, and just to this is now just a huge tangent, but the day before I went to the dentist. All right, so I
Uh-huh.
went to the dentist the day before. So when someone came up to me, I was like opening my mouth, right, because they had to
Yeah.
clean my teeth, right?
Yeah.
But at the facial place, I was like just laying down, like waiting, and I'm like, I'm not at the dentist, so I had to tell her I was like, I have like the urge to like open my mouth every time you come over, and she was like, I'm not gonna put my hands in your mouth. So anyway,
Oh,
yeah, the
funny.
facial though worked out great. Hopefully these pores are gonna clear up here.
Yeah, no, that's super. No, facials are great. I think it's just like it's good for your skin and it feels good and yeah, whatever. If you're a guy or girl, it's totally fine.
Yeah, and this was totally meta. The whole like it wasn't a huge deal to go to the facial. Didn't care about that. But now I'm telling everyone about it. So this is the comfort
Oh,
challenge.
right.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
had to wait until we
Love
got
that.
through the whole thing. So this is
Yeah.
the comfort challenge. I'm like, hey, I went to get a man facial. It was pretty cool, and I'll probably go back. They rub your head and shoulders, and they put a bunch of stuff on your face. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, probably everybody was like, what's that glow going on? Like the just like the
yeah, Yeah, yeah. All right, cool. I think we're all set. Any other final thoughts here?
No, I don't think so. I think
Cool.
we covered a lot.
All
Yeah.
right, thanks a lot, Mackenzie. And for people that want to find you, where should they go?
So they can go to my YouTube channel. It's Mackenzie Fly, just my name. You can also find me on Instagram, which is also my name, Mackenzie Fly. I'm more active on my Instagram. So that's probably a place where if anybody has any questions or anything, they can also just send me a message on there and I'll respond pretty quickly. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll link it up in the show notes and description and all that stuff. So thanks a lot, Mackenzie. We'll talk soon. See ya.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. Bye.